What is up, bros and barettes? I am Inkslasher, and today I'm going to be answering a question that I've seen on a lot of my videos, and that is, what year does Black Ops 4 actually take place in? And it's an interesting one because in all of the promotional material for Black Ops 4, they have not once given us a date or even a year when Black Ops 4 multiplayer actually takes place. Now, for this video, we are not going to be including Blackout or Zombies, simply because those seem to take place on a different timeline. The fact that in Blackout you're able to play as Woods, Mason, and every other character throughout the zombie storyline means that they are taking characters throughout several different years across time, so there's really no way to tell when that takes place or how, in fact, that takes place. Maybe that's something we cover on a future video, but as far as multiplayer, that is something we can cover. Now, unfortunately, it's a little bit easier said than done, as, like I mentioned, nowhere in the promotional material they give us a year or date or anything like that. Now, what they did give us is they told us that it takes place between the events of Black Ops 2 and Black Ops 3. Now, what we know from this is that Black Ops 2 takes place in 2025 and Black Ops 3 takes place in 2065. What this means is we have 40 years that this game could possibly be taking place. But based off of some of the specialist characters' lore, and one thing I found inside of the Black Ops 4 beta, we are actually able to closer figure out when this game actually takes place. So originally when I started doing research on this, I assumed that this game took place in 2045. Reasoning for that is it's directly in between the events of 2025 and 2065. Also, one of the Easter eggs that I covered in the Black Ops 4 beta made this make sense. On the map Seaside, there's a couple of signs throughout the map that are showing off the Festival of Wine. Now, the interesting thing about this is at the very top of the sign, there is a date that says 2040, and on average, wine actually takes an average of 5 years to actually age. That's on average. Some take a lot longer, some take shorter, depends on the wine, but on average 5 years. So it makes sense for this to take place in 2045, but them to be advertising a wine that was made in 2040. But as it turns out, when you do just even a little bit more of research, that makes completely no sense because of the age of these specialist characters. As I mentioned, the main way we're going to get an actual year that this game actually takes place is by looking at the background and lore of the specialist characters. Now, looking at the specialist characters, most of them are around their late 20s to early 30s during the events of Black Ops 3. And as we know, Black Ops 3 takes place in 2065, and if Black Ops 4 was to take place in 2045, most of these specialist characters would be under 10 years old, and that would make no sense whatsoever. Now, the next easy way that I've seen a lot of people trying to figure out when it actually takes place is by taking the birth dates of the specialist characters off of the Call of Duty Wikipedia. As it turns out, the Call of Duty Wikipedia has most of the specialist characters' birth dates 100% wrong. One example of this is when we look at Prophet. Now, Prophet in his transmissions lets us know that in the year 2062, he is 28 years old. He says that word for word. But when we go and look at his birth date on the Call of Duty Wikipedia, it says he was born in 2032, which would make him 30 in 2062. So as we can tell by that, the Call of Duty Wikipedia birth date is 100% wrong. Now, another good example of this is when we look at Seraph. On the Call of Duty Wikipedia, it says that her birth date is 2050 for the year. But as we know, the events of Black Ops 3 take place in 2065, which would make her only 15 at the time that the events of Black Ops 3 actually take place. Which means if this was true, Treyarch and Activision would be supporting child soldiers, and I really don't think they're a fan of that, so I'm guessing that's not the case. That being said, in her bio, it says that she does join the Enforcers at the age of 17. Enforcers is an army, so she is in the army at 17. But again, that doesn't make sense with the birth date of 2050 because her joining the Enforcers would take place in 2067. Therefore, once again, does not work with the timeline of Black Ops 3. Therefore, we can't trust any of the birth dates on the Black Ops 3 or Call of Duty Wikipedia. Which, by the way, who's ever in charge of that Wikipedia page should probably go ahead and just update all of the specialist characters, because I'm pretty sure that all of their birth dates are wrong, but Like I said, I don't know who's in charge of that, but someone might want to get on top of that. So like I said, we can't trust any of the Wikipedia pages, and the game itself doesn't really give us much to go off of, so we have to go off of only the information that we are given in Black Ops 3. And unfortunately, that's really not that much, except for one specialist character. One specialist character and one specialist alone gives us a date during his transmissions in Black Ops 3, and that would be Prophet.
I was 28 when I took a leave of absence to look after my mom and dad. That was 2062. I didn't even have D&I back then. Medically, we're in a very vulnerable phase. We're advanced enough that people are living longer. So much so that we're running into whole new classes of age-related diseases that we can barely diagnose, let alone treat. Within 3 months, both my parents were diagnosed with degenerative conditions that weren't well understood. They couldn't predict the path my mom's would take. It didn't even have a name. I looked after them both, basically powerless to do anything but keep them comfortable. As little by little over the course of 2 years, the things that made them them just faded away. While I watched their decline, I had a lot of time to think. And you know what the single fundamental conclusion I came to was? Meat is weak.
So the few things that we can actually take away from this, and a couple of things we could take away from the other transmissions, are first of all, 2062, he was 28. Then, for the next 2 years after 2062, he took time off of work to take care of his dying parents. After his parents died 2 years later, he then went and got a direct neural interface and many prosthetics, as he found the meat is weak principle to be his new catchphrase, motto, whatever you want to call it. What this means is that Prophet doesn't have his DNI or any of his prosthetics until after 2064. And if you remember, Black Ops 3 takes place a year later in 2065. So then what we can do from here is just answer the question, at the time of the events of Black Ops 4, does Prophet have his prosthetics and DNI? And it's not an easy question to answer, because when we go and look at all of the images of Prophet from the Black Ops 4 beta, it's very difficult to tell. All his arms and legs are covered by clothing, and his head, he has a headband, but it's not the same metal headband that he has throughout Black Ops 3. So the question is are there prosthetics? And at this point, you can't really tell. The only piece of evidence we actually have is when you look at his menu screen and look at his headband, it does appear that there are wires coming out the side of his headband and going into the back of his head, which would hint towards him having a direct neural interface. So after seeing this information and seeing these images in the beta, I was pretty confident that the events of Black Ops 4 take place shortly after Prophet gets his direct neural interface. In other words, the events take place in 2064, slightly before Black Ops 3. But I didn't really have enough to actually support that until yesterday, when Call of Duty, or Treyarch, actually released comics for their specialist characters in Black Ops 4. And the one we're going to be looking at today is once again Prophet. So first of all, if we look at the front cover, you can get a lot from this. So first of all, as we looked at before, he is wearing the same type of gear that he is wearing in the Black Ops 4 beta. He has that same kind of leatherish headband, but what we are able to see this time is that his clothing, especially in his arms, is actually ripped. Even if you look at his right knee down there, you can see that the pants are actually rolled up, and what you can see is prosthetics. You can see metal arms, metal legs, which means the events of Black Ops 4 take place after Prophet has gotten all of his prosthetics, which took place in 2064. And since we know that the events of Black Ops 4 take place between 2025 and 2065, it means the only time that this will make sense is in the year 2064. Now what's odd is that they promoted this game taking place between 2025 and 2065. They said the abilities are going to be more grounded, but the truth is, as it appears, the events only take place 1 year before Black Ops 3. And another interesting thing is if you read the rest of the comic to do with Prophet, the events in the comic actually take place after Black Ops 3 in the year 2069, because it says it takes place 5 years after Prophet's mother died, which as we know is is 2064, so 2064 plus 5 years, 2069. Now, the interesting thing about that number, the year 2069, is if we go back and actually look at my alpha footage for Black Ops 4 and look at that exact same Easter egg that we looked at the beginning on the sign for the wine festival, the one that said 2040 in the alpha of Black Ops 4 also said 2069 instead of 2040. So what I'm wondering is if when they first started designing Black Ops 4, if it was actually supposed to take place in 2069, but later they changed their mind and tried to make it earlier. That may make sense as to why they actually changed that wine festival sign after the alpha of the game. But as of right now, all of the evidence that I've seen, it's going to take place in 2064. Really, that's the only date that would really make sense. But guys, let me know what you think. If you think I'm right here, let me know in the comments. If you disagree and think it's at another time period, let me know what you think. Also, if you enjoyed the video, it'd be very greatly appreciated if you could hit that like button. The video took a lot of research, so if you enjoyed it, it'd be awesome if you could hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel and like what you see, want to stay up to date on all my videos, the best way to do so is make sure you hit that subscribe button and have notifications turned on. But guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace out.
We are reaching for the stars, but we're making this too hard, and I want